feature on your car did it take you way too long to notice? Story 1. Bought my car used a few years ago. AC works, but doesn't ever get super cold. Just last week I find a max AC button. As in you have to 1. Turn the AC on, 2. Twist the dial all the way down, and then 3. Push the stupid magical button for the AC to get really cold. I'm hoping for an unseasonably warm December. Story 2. It took me like 4 months to realize that my motorcycle has a little compartment where I can store my registration. Tucked behind the engine, I finally notice a key slot. Story 3. I went into the back of my Golf to replace one of the rear shocks and realized there was a hidden stock sub back there that had been disconnected, rewired it to the amp tight next to it and worked like a charm. Previous owner must have hated bass. Story 4. I was so pissed about this when I found out because it's extremely useful and subtle, but my car, and basically every car in existence now has a little indicator that tells you what side of the car your gas goes in on. It's on your dashboard and it looks like a little arrow on the side you need to fill up on. Story 5. One car I rented took me a while to figure out where the volume control was on the steering wheel. All the other buttons you expect to find were there, but no volume. Turns out it was on the other side of the wheel, like the trigger button on a game controller. You can't see it from the front. That was hard to find, and I was looking for it. Was driving me crazy. Story 6. My car has a push-button start. As long as the key fob is inside the vehicle, you can start it by pressing the ignition button. However, when it gets really cold, the car has a hard time getting the signal from the key fob. So when it was cold out, I would get in my car and then would have to cup my keys in my hands and blow hot air on them for several minutes until the key fob was warm enough to be detected by the car, then I could push the button to start it. I did this for months during the first winter in which I owned the vehicle, before I realized that the manufacturer had anticipated this, and built in a feature where you could simply push the ignition button with the key fob itself. This always starts the car, even if the key fob is freezing cold. Felt pretty stupid. Story 7. When you click the air recirculation button while your AC is on, it makes the AC like 10x colder. I didn't know this for years and always thought my AC sucked in my car. Sure felt stupid after figuring that one out. Story 8. Didn't know my car had a backup cam. I was always looking behind me when I backed up and the screen went back to normal when I turned back around. Someone had to mention it to me before I realized. Story 9. Lost my AUX cord after about 4 months and drove my car with no music for a while. I learned I could connect via Bluetooth and then eventually with USB to play music. I felt so dumb. The dumb thing is I had already set my phone up so I could take calls with it. But I had to knowingly choose a source for Bluetooth or USB for it to play, and didn't know how until my wife taught me. Story 10. After a couple years of owning a TC, someone showed me that I could remove the headrests from the front seat, push the seats all the way forward, then recline the seat all the way down so that the back of the front seats were flat and lined up with the back seats. So you could sit in the back seat and lay down and the back seats reclined a little too. If drive-in movies were still a big thing, it would have been perfect. I still wish somebody told me while I was still in high school so I could have taken advantage of it. I wish. Story 11. The seat warmer. Occasionally, when my butt felt really warm, I just thought it was because of the heater, but then there was a time when I was turning the heater all the way up, but my butt felt really cold, so I got really confused, and learned that the car has a butt warming option. Story 12. Not exactly answering your question but thought these were too funny to pass up. 1. When I was little and would press all the dashboard buttons like a little, my dad told me that the red button with the triangles on it was an eject button. I did not figure out it was actually the hazard light button until I took driver's ed 2. When I turned 16, my parents got me a car. My birthday is in September. When it started to get cold, I would press this button with a snowflake on it that I had assumed to be the window defroster. It wasn't until the following summer when I had complained that there wasn't any air conditioning in my car did my sister point out that the snowflake button was actually the button for air conditioning. She had let me drive her around all winter blasting the air conditioning and didn't say a thing. Story 13. Not a car, but my bike stalled in traffic once and I needed to find the choke switch badly in order to get it running. Spent nearly an hour looking for the switch around, under, beside the engine but nothing. Turns out the switch was on my handlebar. Story 14. It took me so long to realize that little hook things above the rear passenger doors of my car could be used to hang clothes, like a suit jacket so it wouldn't wrinkle. Story 15. I have an 04 Malibu for my grandfather. One night I realized I forgot to roll my window down after coming home, so I decided to just reach in and unlock the door from the inside. That night I realized I have an alarm in a bad neighborhood. Story 16. Literally like the last 3 cars I've bought been taken along while other people bought. I've taught the sellers things like, oh, the seats fold up down. There's a hidden toolbox in the trunk. The shelf slides out of your hatchback so you can actually fit things in it. Maybe I'm weird, but I try everything the first minute I get into a car. Story 17. Heated mirrors. Because they both were not connected from factory. So after 15 years one of them got broken and the spare parts guy said that my car had heated mirrors and I just thought that he tried to sell me a more expensive mirror, but the connection was there and it worked. Story 18. I owned my first car for 10 years. Sold it to my friend before moving out of state. Went back for a visit and was driving us around in it, and only then did I realize the dual function of the cruise control set reset buttons excel to sell. Because nothing in the car was digital, I never noticed that pushing the excel would actually change the cruise control speed since the needle on the speedometer wouldn't really move unless I pushed it several times in a row. While I owned the car, if the cruise control wasn't set just right I would just cancel it, manually get to the speed I wanted, and reset it. Story 19. I bought an old Mk1 Golf to learn mechanics on. Fixed it up and got it roadworthy, but I had this annoying problem where very occasionally the left or right side parking lights would stay on after I parked. It was only ever one side, not both at the same time. I spent ages trying to track down the electrical gremlin causing this and used to have to disconnect the battery whenever it happened. Turns out some European cars have a feature where the parking lights will remain on whatever side you've left the indicator stock pointing to. Story 20. My mom didn't realize that there was a button on her key fob that would open the trunk of her Mini Cooper until after having had it for 5 years. Then she proceeded to never, ever use it. Story 21. Not really sure if this counts, but my very first car, an '88 Toyota Tercel, I had the brights on for months without realizing it. What made it worse is I got out of work at night almost every day and got pissed off when people would occasionally beep at me and flash their brights. Story 22. When I put the gas pedal all the way to the floor, it kind of clicks. Realized later on that it was actually downshifting my car to accelerate faster. Story 23. I've had my car for over 3 years now, had kids in the back seats with drinks that I've made them hold in their laps, because there were no cup holders in the back seat, for about a year and a half before the breakup. Got into a discussion last week with my friend about how I had no place to put all these cups we had gotten after going to eat. He's like, aren't there cup holders in your back seat? Nah, I wish there was, but there's not. Then what's that? What's what? That's separation. What? So the pulls down the middle seat in the back of my car to reveal 2 perfectly functional cup holders and a small table. I could have used those so many times, instead of having the oops, as one of the kids decided to splash on themselves. But nope, my derpy didn't realize they were there. I'd try to excuse it by the fact that I'm never in the back seat, but I had to be back there to help them get buckled in. I should have seen that compartment. Story 24. 2015 Mini Cooper. It's full of quirks. When you start the car, an image of the car winks at you. The feature that took me too long to notice was an internal lock on the gas cap. From the outside it has an indentation when you manually pull it open to refuel, so I'm washing the car and I decide to wash behind the gas cap. I pulled and broke off the body panel. I pulled more than I should have, but it's meant to be pulled. It cost $160 to replace the part and have it painted. If someone wants to siphon the gas, I'd rather have them take it than pay $160 each time anyone goes to open the cap. The cap is unlocked when the doors are unlocked. Story 25. I had my 30-year-old Volvo for 3 years before I realized the security system was not, in fact, an alarm at all, but it prevents the car from starting. That almost gave me a panic attack. Story 26. The windscreen heater. I spend like 5-10 minutes on mornings where it was cold trying to defrost and demist my screen so I could actually see. My girlfriend pops in my car one morning and was like, why don't you just turn the windscreen heater on? Long and behold, the dial I use every day to turn the heat on has a windscreen option as the last option. I didn't recognize the symbol, and it was at the end, so just never got that far. Needless to say, I felt dumb. Story 27. 2004 Honda CR-V inherited from my grandmother. Just now realized there's a removable folding table built into the trunk. I'm about to have so many more picnics in scenic spots, people who don't read the owner's manual for their ride. I'm the complete opposite, usually downloading and scouring the manual between deciding on what vehicle to buy and taking delivery. Story 28. That I can set the sensitivity of the automatic windshield wipers. I've had the car for 2 years, and during heavy rain the automatic windshield wipers just wouldn't cut it, which was slightly annoying. Just the other day I found this little on the wipers lever thingy I've never noticed before. It was of course turned all the way down. Story 29. Oh, this one for me. I drove a nice little OL Civic 2015 and bought that sucker brand new. 2 years go by and my boyfriend informs me of this secret handle that I have never seen. Apparently this handle can manually make the seat go higher. I looked at him like what he told me was the most important sentence he said in my life. This is great news for a 5-foot-tall girl. Y'all forgive the ignorance. All previous cars before my Civic had the electronic thing and I never thought there would be a manual handle for it. Story 30. I had my car for over a year before I fully understood how the turn signals worked. I didn't know I could just tap them when changing lanes and they turn off automatically after a few seconds. Story 31. I knew about it beforehand, but I am constantly reminded of how useful the Ford keypad entry is. Can't tell you how many times I've walked outside and remembered not only do I not have my keys, I have no idea where they even are, then, oh yeah, I don't need them, right? Story 32. I've had my car for 5 years and only just discovered I can dim and brighten the radio display. Only found out because after my battery died a lot of the system settings restored to default. Story 33. My F-150 has these 2 odd buttons that look like the side mirrors. Every time I tried them while driving nothing happened. Then one day waiting on my son at school I hit the left one and bam, bright side spotlight led from the mirror. The soccer mom next to me was blinded but not impressed. Turns out they only work under 10 miles per hour. Story 34. I didn't realize I had high beams until someone I was giving a ride to mentioned maybe you should turn on your high beams on a dark, twisty road. I thought I had them on, but I didn't realize you can push the stock forward to have some hella high beams. I always thought my high beams were the second setting on the stock. Story 35. Not mine, but a relative. We were in his car that he had had for at least 2 to 3 years by this point, and he was complaining about the light coming through the sunroof being too hot, so I reached up and closed the shade. He looked at me like I had just raised the dead. He had no idea that sunroofs typically come with ways to, close them. Story 36 I noticed after almost 2 years that my cup holders are two different sizes. The one in the front is smaller than the one closer to the console. It's only very slight, but some cups fit into the bigger one but not the smaller one. I'm frustrated that they aren't just both the bigger size. Story 37 I have a button on my Subaru that says Tie Cat. I had no idea what it was until I started calling it the Party Cat button. Man, the parties me and my cat had were unreal. Still have no idea what the Party Cat button does. Story 38 I learned I can access my trunk from inside my car in a pretty funny way. Leaving work, have my keys in my backpack, forgot this info. Throw my backpack in the trunk and slam it shut. It doesn't close right away. Car detects keys in the trunk and keeps it from closing until I force it to close. I put my hand under the door handle to auto unlock, but it doesn't unlock. After checking my pockets, I realize I locked my keys in my car. No problem. Get roadside assistance, open the door, pop the trunk. Good to go. I call roadside assistance and they send someone over with a tow truck. I tell them the situation. He pops open my door but the car wouldn't start, which I thought was weird. I have push to start, so as long as the keys are in the car, it will start. I also learned my keys need to be in the actual cabin of the car for it to start. I thought that maybe if my backpack could be closer to the cabin engine that it could detect the keys and start. The tow truck guy lifts up my car from the rear axle and proceeds to bounce my car up and down for 2 minutes to roll the backpack to the cabin. It made for a great Snapchat. Seriously looked like my car had huge hydraulics. After it doesn't work and we laugh about the bouncing. He says I may need to cut a hole to the trunk for my back seats. Refusing to do that, I spend a few minutes looking around the back seat until one of them folds over, revealing the trunk. I had the car 2 years and didn't know that. Story 39 5 years in with my car, and just learned that holding my thumb over the ridges on the driver or passenger side door handle will lock all the doors. Story 40 the cigarette lighter in my car stopped working, which meant I had no way to charge my phone anymore. Turns out there's another one hidden way away in the back near the cup holders that's impossible to see without bending down. Story 41 I thought the Bluetooth was broken in my car for years. Turns out when I hit AUX it would default to the USB or headphone jack and I have to manually go through the menu if it ever fails to detect my phone. A heads up would have been real nice. Ford. Story 42 didn't know how cruise control worked, and by the time I figured it out, I had been driving for about 4 years. I used to think you had to simultaneously click the button and push it down for it to work, and if you wanted to change the speed you'd have to press the brakes gas, undo the cruise, and completely restart it once you manually got it to the right speed. Story 43 I owned an Audi for years without realizing it had heated side mirrors. I just found out in May and sold the car in June. That knowledge would have really come in handy during the cold and snowy winters here. Story 44 my Expedition has a mirror that can pop down from the ceiling so the driver can see everyone sitting in the back seats. It's really useful. The mirror was stolen out of my car last week. Story 45 if you turn the dimmer switch all the way right, or if it's a dial, all the way bright, then keep going, it will click and all cabin lights will turn on. Took me a bit too long. If your stock radio has a secondary dial in Chevy trucks it's labeled PCV I believe, and you can turn it in about 3 increments, and that is to help cancel out the noise the car makes going down the road so that you can only hear the radio. That is if you already don't blast it. Those funny foot buttons on pre-1980s cars are for brights. If panels look funny or odd, push them lightly. They may be an ashtray or compartment. Story 46 my old subby Forester has windshield wipers heaters. It's like a defrost button for the bottom of your windshield. Didn't take me long to notice it, but being my first Subaru, it was a treasure to find. Story 47 my uncle's old Everest had some sort of exhaust near the cup holders. It took me a long time to figure out they were piping in cold air to the cup holder to cool the drinks down. Story 48 the snowflake button makes my AC actually cold, otherwise the coldest setting on the dial is normal air. It took me a year and a half to figure this out, including 2 summers with temps in the mid 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Blasting the AC felt like I was being blow-dried on the highest heat, but my car is 11 years old so I figured something was just busted. I apologize, thank the auto shop worker who wondered out loud why I kept the setting off. It's because I'm a fool. Story 49 my first car I bought was a very used Ford Mondeo, full of rust, but it drove great and had plenty of space for my dog in the rear. I loved the heating on the seats. This was pure luxury for me in the wintertime. It had a small crack in the front window, so I called my insurance to have it replaced. Only when the actual company that would do the replacement asked, is this the model with the heating in the front window or the one without, I realized that I had that feature too. You know how great it is to just sit in the car, letting the electronics defrost your rear and front windows in the wintertime. This is so great and really missed in my current car is old, as cheap, but lacking features like that dash. Story 50 if the key fob is bust, and you need to disable the immobilizer, you can put the key into the driver door, and enter the radio code and this will disable the immobilizer permanently or until you reverse the process. Each twist is 1 number, starting clockwise. So for say code 1221, you twist right once, left twice, right twice, left once and the immobilizer will be disabled. Edit I learned this the hard way. Story 51 had an older car I inherited from my sister. She told me when you turned the heater on, sometimes it smelled like maple syrup. I thought that was a great perk for a while and even joked about it with my friends. That's a coolant leak, friends. Story 52 I owned a '07 Honda Civic EX for 3 years before realizing that I could put the back seats down to expand the truck. The reason the seats are released by two cable latches mounted on the top of the trunk interior, and I'm too tall to see them without ducking my head into the trunk. Story 53. I found out by accident that my electronic key fob can wind down all the windows. Press unlock once, then press it again and hold to wind down all windows. Previously I was going into my Steam box and doing each window before letting my dog in. Story 54. My sister was reading our BMW's manual the other day and found out that if we press the key fob lock button, it locks, sets the alarm, and activates the tilt sensor. If we press it a second time, it deactivates the tilt sensor. Basically, it sets off the alarm if someone rocks our car or attempts to tow it. Story 55 was with my mom when she was selling her old car. She was so pissed off that the buyer had found all these features she didn't even know about. Sunglasses holder, cup holder could be adjusted. She had a USB charger under a flap, and in the middle console she even thought only one seat in the back could fold down when there was a handle in the boot for the other two. Story 56 had to explain to my wife that there was a hang-up button on the steering wheel. We were on Bluetooth. I was in shock and questioned why I married her. Story 57. I leased a 2010 Audi A4, and didn't realize until a few weeks before handing it in that it had a subwoofer, and there was a setting separate from bass that was just turned almost all of the way down. I dialed in my settings when I first got it and never bothered to look again. It's not like it sounded completely strange or bad, not enough to go investigating. It was much nicer for the short time I had it while the setting was cranked up. I suspect my ex-wife turned it down on me at some point. She always hated how I always cranked the low end up. Story 58. Had my car over a year before I found out the battery was located in front of the driver's side front wheel. I will have to remove the wheel and hub liner if I ever need to change it. Edit typos. Story 59. I drive a Mercedes, and just realized if I press and hold the brake pedal in for 3 seconds, a hold light is displayed on the dash and the brakes remain engaged until I press the gas pedal. It makes for long lights a bit nicer. Story 60. About 6 months into owning my Ford Fusion, I was flipping through the settings on the radio, speed volume or something like that. Greatest thing ever, the radio gets louder the faster you go, and lowers when you start to slow. Story 61. That the keys had a push to start feature if pushed quickly twice. I was walking away from it and my hands were full. All of a sudden it locks and I hear the engine cut on. For a split second I felt had confirmation Transformers was real. Story 62. There's a little button on the end of the windscreen wiper stalk. It moves the digital display on the dash from total number of miles driven, through current MPG, miles left in the tank etc. The man that fixed a chip in my windscreen showed me. Story 63. I struggled for years with a shitty AUX cord, but I realized that my crappy 2006 Mercury Milan has Bluetooth. The previous owner changed the radio to an aftermarket one, and I never realized the Bluetooth feature. So happy. Story 64. I had a Chrysler with a trunk release button in my glove box. For the longest time I thought the only way to open the trunk was by putting the key in the trunk and unlocking it. Story 65. High idle on my new truck. I brought it to the dealership months after owning it to see if they could install one for the winter months. The guy laughed and shows me how. For those interested, it's a 2017 Dodge 2500 Cummins. Start truck, turn on cruise control, press set button, high idle comes on, hold resume button and its RPMs rise. Hidden quirk. Story 66. Audi driver here. So turns out that right next to the wheel there is a lever type thing that lets me turn on blinking lights on either side of the car. Haven't figured out what they are meant to do yet, but they make a cool clicking sound, so I love to play with them. Story 67. Couple of days after getting my car I was going through the sound options and noticed a subwoofer option with a slider bar in my menu. When turned up the bass was extremely deep and rich. After looking for a while I was unable to find it and was baffled at the fact that there was a tremendous amount of bass and I couldn't locate the source. Fast forward like 2 weeks after I get a flat tire and when removing the cover in the trunk I found the sub. It was molded to fit into the negative space of the spare tire. My sub was sitting on my spare tire. I felt dumb and amazed at the same time. Story 68. My AUX jack. Really wanted one when I bought my car, but decided to forfeit it when I decided to make my purchase since the CD player has a 6-disc changer and plays MP3s. Then, one day I was cleaning out the back seat and I noticed that on the very bottom of the back of the center console there was a removable piece of plastic. Being the curious person I am, I removed it and voila, there was a stereo RCA jack, so I bought an RCA to headphone cord, figured out how to go into AUX mode on the stereo and never looked back. That design decision still mystifies me to this day though. Story 69. My car's AUX cord. I drive a 2008 VW Fox. For the first 3 months I was using a radio transmitter that allows you to connect your phone through the power source that creates a tiny radio station to play songs from. The thing has horrible quality and is so unpractical. My car was 9 years old and is literally the most basic car you can get. After 3 months of riding it, my friend asked whether I had an AUX cord or not. I said I don't. He googled the question and found out the thing was hidden inside the glove box. I love my Fox. Story 70. That you can't lock the doors if the key is in the ignition unless all 4 doors are closed. If you try to lock them with the keys in and an open door, they will immediately unlock themselves. Prevents you from locking your keys in. Story 71. Not me but my mum. She had always owned those little Nissan Micras. Always an old model too because they were cheaper. Recently she was told that her car wouldn't pass her MOT, so for the past few months she's been scouring for an upgrade. I was in the car with her the other day and she's telling me about all the new features cars have these days. Sensor parking, inbuilt GPS, Bluetooth, and also the automatic light that comes on when you open the door. Wait, what? I looked up and reached for the switch on the light that makes it come on when you open the door. Next day she texts me that the light was miraculously coming on when she went for work that morning. Story 72. There is a sunglass holder underneath my steering wheel. I had been putting my sunglasses in the GPS holder the whole time and getting them scratched up. Story 73. A button under the rearview mirror that gives it a dark blue tint. Really useful if you have blinding headlights behind you. Took me like 3 years to find out what it did. Story 74. My car will honk at me and lock itself if I only press the lock button once when I get out. For some reason I've always pressed the button twice, but when I accidentally pressed it only once, I jumped a little when my car honked as I was walking away. Story 75. The fact that the button to unlock my door is on the console with my radio CD player. It took me several days after getting my car to figure that one out. Prior to noticing it I had been locking and unlocking using only my keys. Story 76. Have you ever been driving in the rain, and the rain is coming down at just that perfectly horrible rate where your slower windshield wiper setting is a bit too slow, and the faster setting is way too fast? Well, in some cars, there's a dial for exactly this situation. In my Prius, also my old Corolla before it was totaled, there's a little ring around the windshield wiper stalk, and if you twist the ring, it changes the speed of the windshield wiper's slower setting. Story 77. Had a Ford Focus for 10 years. I thought my fog lights didn't work. Nope, gotta pull that light switch. I thought I broke the light switch and panicked before my friend told me it was supposed to pull out. On a funnier note, that car was entirely automatic, except for the moon roof. You had to crank that open. It took me way too long to realize that everything was automatic, except for that god moon roof. And it wasn't an aftermarket either. The original owner bought it like that, new. Story 78. This is one I noticed very quickly, but I'm sure many people wouldn't. In a Jeep Cherokee, there is storage under the passenger seat. That is not the feature. After you lift up the seat, there is a map printed on the underside with longitude, latitude. These are coordinates to Moab, the big Jeep meetup in the middle of nowhere. Story 79. Two features, both on a 97 Jetta. One, when I put my key in to lock my doors, I had to turn it twice. Once for my door, twice for all doors, same for unlocking. One day I was locking my doors and for some reason just held the key over to the right, and my sunroof started closing. It was the only power window I had, rest were manual, but was amazed that I could close my roof by holding my key to the fog lights. I knew I had them, had no idea how to turn them on. One day, just rummaging through to try and figure out where everything was located so I could replace the speed cluster, never ended up replacing it. I noticed a small random button I had never seen before, pressed it, nothing happened, then it dawned on me that this button may be for the fog lights. Turned my lights on, pressed the button, and voila, fog lights found. Story 80. Learning that clicking the unlock button on your car remote or turning the key in the unlock direction twice in a row will unlock all the car doors. Story 81. Not a feature per se, just good design. The back seats of a VW Corrado is actually quite nice, plenty of legroom. I could sit in that for a couple of hours, and my girlfriend and I did do that and watched Netflix. Story 82. Every car has it and I had no clue. You know that little gas pump sticker on the right or left of your car panel where it shows speed fuel? Well, that's where your pump hole is located on your car, if it's on the right or the left of the car. Story 83. I was looking on Carfax for a new car, and the one I was looking at buying had an 8-year gap between first title and anyone reporting that the vehicle was gray on my car. The fact that there's a telephone button on the steering wheel, but it was built before Bluetooth. Story 84. VW Caddy forgot to close the windows again. Already took the key out of the ignition. Bad luck, you have to put the key back into the ignition and turn it just to lock the windows. Electrical window openers installed. Workaround: leave the car, press and hold lock button on the central lock remote control to close all the windows. I recently figured this out and have owned the car for 3 years. Story 85. My automatic start. I have a 2012 Nissan Altima and it took a year before I found out I had it. It's one of the models where you just have your keys on you and you push the button to start once you're in the car and foot on the brake. I was looking to out an aftermarket auto start so I didn't have to run out and warm the car up in the winter. After perusing many car sites, I was told that my car doesn't have the ability, and also can't support aftermarket parts to do it because the car requires your foot on the brake. So I gave up, then like a year later I'm walking away from the car and accidentally hit the lock button 3 times. I pay it no mind until a few seconds later I hear the car rev on. My mind was blown. Also, Danstay found out that if I hold the lock button for 10 seconds it will make windows roll down. Story 86. My brother's first car had a switch that wasn't connected, so we all switched it randomly while he was driving around. A year later the car wouldn't start. The mechanic eventually told us it was a kill switch to disable the ignition to discourage theft. Everyone had just switched it an even number of times until that day. Story 87. Over a year and a mate in the passenger seat said, "Oh cool, you have a sunglasses holder. Never seen one before, it's great," on the ceiling behind the mirror. Story 88. Mirror dimmer for when people behind you have their brights on or whatever. I thought it was automatic and wondered if it just sucked. Found an option in the touchscreen by actually reading through it labeled mirror dimmer and pressed it. Suddenly they changed and blocked the light. Story 89. The time adjustment buttons. They're directly behind the steering wheel. I went about 4 months after my first DST in this car, just mentally adding an hour. Story 90. I had my car for about a year and a half before I realized it had remote start. I was walking from my car into work and it was really early morning, so it was dark and I couldn't see the buttons on my key, so I button mashed it to hear the horn honk that it was locked. Next thing I know, my car starts up and I couldn't believe it. I bought my car used, and the salesman said the button was auto start if I ever wanted to put that feature in. Story 91. The front seats recline all the way back and the rear seats recline halfway, creating a complete chaise lounge of the 2 rows so your legs stretch to the front. Noticed it in the manual when I was trying to find other instructions. Made that summer's drive-in movies so much better. Story 92. Traction control toggle. I can now floor it from a stop without it bogging down. I would see the light flash when I lost traction, but never noticed the button to the left of my steering wheel to turn it off. Hard drive to store RIP and store music. I saw music box in my list of audio sources, but never thought twice about it, as I just stream music through my phone over Bluetooth. I recently popped in a CD and saw an option for copying a song.